Well, hello everybody, I hope you are all well. Welcome back to another Doctor Who product review on The Host Productions. In today's review, we're going to be delving back into the wonderful era of the 13th Doctor and taking a look at Doctor Who Series 12, however not in the usual episode review format, as in today's review I am of course going to be taking a look at the original TV soundtrack with music as composed by Segun Akinola, which has just recently been released by Silver Screen Records. Now previously, as a part of this series, I have already reviewed the original TV soundtrack for Series 11 and the music from that album, and this review is going to be taking a very similar format to that one, taking a look at the actual product itself, and then briefly talking about the different types of music that you can of course find on this album, being very strikingly different compared to the previous new series Doctor Who composer, being Murray Gold. Now, if you are somebody who is interested about my thoughts and opinions of the actual series itself, I have already reviewed all 10 episodes as a part of Doctor Who Series 12, as well as the previous series, including Resolution. I go into depth on each individual story, what I like and dislike. This review is solely going to be taking a look at the actual music, as I tend to not focus on the behind the scenes when reviewing the actual stories. I focus on the adventures and the characters, and these reviews are completely dedicated to the music itself, which I'm happy to do because I think that Segun Akinola's music is something of which that is worth a lot of credit, and I think that these videos are kind of the least that I can do to showcase his talent, and hopefully throughout this video you may yourself be in fact interested by what I say throughout this review and decide to in fact go and purchase this release, as the music is such an important part of Doctor Who. It makes the story what it is, although sometimes, and most of the time in fact, it does go unrecognised. So this album is of course available to be purchased in a number of different formats. You can get it in this lovely, I do believe they call these a digipack. It is a cardboard case with the CDs on the inside. This is available to order from Silver Screen, I do believe probably Amazon as well, around £9.99, so it's considerably cheap. Can of course also get downloads for this album as well in MP3 and FLAC file, whatever a FLAC file is, I do not know. However, I do believe those are ever so slightly more expensive, being around £11 and £12. You can also stream this entire album on Spotify if you so wish to get a taste, I suppose, of Segun Akinola's music style, and no doubt there will also be a few videos on YouTube as well taking a look at the individual tracks. However, to support the artist, of course, as always, I recommend purchasing it from actual suppliers, stocking the physical product as opposed to getting it online for free, because by buying it you are supporting the artist who's created it, and hopefully that will lead to more Doctor Who soundtracks to be released in the future. So physical media all the way, as always, as I always do of course say throughout these reviews. So of course, to start off this video, let's take a look at the digipack itself and essentially what you get for your money. Series 12 original television soundtrack uses a rather similar design to that of the standard DVD and Blu-ray, as well as some of the early promotional material for Series 12, the Space for All theme that was of course used, featuring the main protagonists on a white background with of course the rainbow vortex design at the very bottom, exactly what we see here, however of course within the group format, featuring all of the members of the fam together. So we do of course have the 13th Doctor there in the very middle, looking much more dramatic and like she actually has a bit of emotion behind her compared to the previous rather iconic image of the 13th Doctor, with of course the TARDIS in the background, the one that was used in fact to reveal the 13th Doctor's costume, which by this point has been used to death. I think the actual design itself is lovely, very vibrant and stylish, and kind of reflects modern sci-fi I think quite well, or at least modern TV shows or the likes that you would expect to see on say Netflix. At the very bottom we get the new series Doctor Who logo in the orange and yellow typeface, as well as the Series 12 original TV soundtrack with music by Segun Akinola, clearly printed there at the very bottom. As for the actual spine of the product itself, we have a light blue with of course the same material printed once again, including the Silver Screen logo, and then of course on the back you get all that crucial information relating to the media that is presented across both of the discs. So at the very top we have volume Volume 1, including the Series 12 opening titles, as well as music for episodes including Spyfall Part 1 and 2, Orphan 55, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, and Fugitive of the Jadoon. There is a rather brilliant divide between the middle here, which is of course representing the overall design of the 13th Doctor's shirt, of course as well using the same blue on the background of this that they would on the actual 13th Doctor costume. And then we also have here Volume 2, which is the music for Praxeus, Can You Hear Me, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, Ascension of the Cybermen, The Timeless Children, and then of course the Series 12 album finishes off with the Ascension of the Cybermen end credits, with your usual company information there printed at the very bottom. Of course the track list is also available online. Taking a look on the inside, of course this is one of those digipacks, therefore the entire product is made out of cardboard. I imagine some people will like that and some people will no doubt hate it. The whole idea of it is due to being eco-friendly and all of that, and cardboard being more sufficient than a CD case, which admittedly, although we use CD cases all the time, especially if you are a fan of Big Finish, if you drop them accidentally, they are very, very delicate. I've noticed that, especially at the hinges, they always will crack, and the amount of CD cases I've needed to replace is ridiculous. Even just through general use, they snap quite a lot, and it is quite unusual considering that we use that design of product all the time. However, it's not necessarily that effective. But anyway, I'm blabbering about CD cases. This is what is happening during lockdown at the minute. Very small things are distracting me. So we do of course have once again that continuation of the rainbow design in the very middle, looking very nice indeed, along with of course space for all the slogan for the main media material that were of course produced for Doctor Who Series 12 and advertising. In the middle, this does of course slide out to reveal a booklet, which we'll be taking a look at in a bit, as well as some of the promotional art that was released after Fugitive of the Jadoon, featuring of course the 13th Doctor and the Ruth Doctor. Alternatively, of course, at the opposite side we get the first disc, which has a rather lovely white background with a reuse of the image of the 13th Doctor, being of course Volume 1 printed at one side. On the back of this we do have one of the promotional images that was used for Spyfall, including of course the TARDIS and the rest of the fam in the rather unique costumes that they did display throughout that story, being very James Bond-esque. Flipping around to the opposite side we have Volume 2. This time round this disc features Sacha Dhawan as the Master with his rather brilliant purple costume, and then of course behind this we have another image of Sacha, in fact the same image with the black background. So yeah, a really lovely style, rather stylish. I love the way that we have the different images throughout the series, looking very smart indeed. Having a brief overview now of the booklet, of course we have the cover art that is also used on the front of the product, as well as the rainbow effect, and the rest of this basically introduces the album overall, a little bit of a discussion with Segun, as well as the monster from Orphan 55 there, and then we basically have credits for each individual track, or each individual episode at least, and who kind of contributed music to them, including the orchestra and everything like that, and as well as a few images accompanied to of course represent the relevant stories. Overall, it's okay. It would have been nice to have a general discussion with Segun maybe, as say the interview that was presented within DWM recently, but more of a relaxed approach as opposed to just having the credits in there. But overall, it's still nice, of course, giving credit where it is due and talking about the episodes overall and what he wanted to do throughout this season. Then of course you have a little thank you there at the very end as well. So overall, a nice accompaniment for this box set. However, it would be nice to have a bit more information in there from Segun himself, talking about the music generally. So in conclusion, for the Series 12 original television soundtrack physical product, I think it has some really lovely presentation. I love the way that we have the colours of the vortex being reflected within the booklet. It makes the overall product feel nice and consistent. I love the range of publicity images that have been used as well, reflecting the pivotal moments within the season, including the reveal of the Sacha Dhawan Master and of course a Fugitive Doctor, as well as featuring a rather bright and vibrant cover art, which admittedly is a bit more visually exciting compared to the original Series 11 release, as well as some rather nice choices in imagery on the discs as well. I imagine that one of the main criticisms of this product is no doubt going to be around the cardboard digipack. If you don't like the cardboard digipack design, then no doubt you're not going to like this product because it is solely cardboard, and perhaps in the future it would be nice to see an alternative version being released for both this series and Series 11 to be in a standard CD case as opposed to this design. However, to be honest, I don't mind it. I think one of my only criticisms is that due to it being cardboard, if you drop it, it can get scuffed around the edges and things like that, and perhaps it's not as protective as plastic would be. But to be honest, I think it's okay. As I say, it's got some nice presentation, and for £10, if you are a collector and a fan of Doctor Who music, it is definitely something that is worth purchasing. So now discussing the actual content on the discs for this release. Of course, Segun Akinola has now composed 2 seasons of Doctor Who, and I think that it is fair to say his music style and instruments that he uses to create his music is very different to that of Murray Gold, and that isn't a bad thing. It is great to have variety. However, of course, Murray Gold has composed new series Doctor Who since 2005, and he did of course leave in Twice Upon a Time, the final 12th Doctor story. Therefore, he has composed for every single new series Doctor, with the exception of Jodie Whittaker. And naturally, of course, along the way, because he has covered the vast majority of new series Doctor Who, as a result he has also composed for every single monster that has returned. He is, of course, the creator of the vast majority of iconic music that we associate with new series Doctor Who. The heartbeat design of the Dalek theme music, the rather metal stomping music that we associate with the new series Cybermen. When we relate to Gallifrey, we think of This Is Gallifrey, and of course the individual Doctor themes such as I'm the Doctor, and of course Strange Creatures, as well as the emotional 9th Doctor soundtrack. It is fair to say that Murray Gold's impact on new series Doctor Who has been large, and I think it will be a challenge for any composer to essentially take up the reins and compose for Doctor Who. And I think that without people even realising, Segun Akinola's music has created a big impression on the 13th Doctor's era as a whole. Without him, the era would be very different. I think it is fair to say that Segun Akinola is in fact one of my personal favourite elements when it comes to the 13th Doctor era so far. His style is strikingly different to that of Murray Gold. Quite often, and more than often, Murray Gold's music would in fact almost overpower the story. There is a lot of moments throughout new series Doctor Who where I can think of the music being rather over-exaggerated, sometimes drowning out the actual narrative and the script, and I suppose that is more of an editing choice as opposed to the actual music itself, and sometimes that can in fact be a negative thing. The amount of times that I've heard I'm the Doctor now makes me in fact dislike that soundtrack quite a lot, simply because of how repeated it is throughout Doctor Who series 5 and 6. It gets incredibly repetitive and rather annoying. However, Segun Akinola's music takes a very different approach. It is a soundtrack that goes into the background, and that is something that I did also refer to within the Series 11 review, so if you've seen that review already, apologies, I am kind of repeating myself by this point, because the Series 12 soundtrack obviously follows a very similar style to that of Doctor Who Series 11. We see a lot of the tunes and themes that were used throughout Series 11 incorporated into the Series 12 music. An obvious example of that is of course a theme for the 13th Doctor herself. The previous theme, that was cleverly titled 13 within Series 11, used a rather iconic and noticeable piece of music that has been incorporated into this series, which is very different compared to the original version, being rather upbeat and happy and almost celebratory. This time round, the 13th Doctor's theme takes a much darker twist, especially when we get to see it incorporated within the likes of the End of the Spyfall soundtrack, that rather emotional and weak soundtrack when the 13th Doctor witnesses Gallifrey essentially burnt to a cinder, and likewise as well when we get to see her theme incorporated throughout the music for Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. It feels rather personal and like there is a darker character lurking underneath the 13th Doctor that we previously didn't see too much of within Series 11. Kind of seeing the character development of the 13th Doctor being incorporated into the music style, which I think is very clever. Other noticeable music, of course, Spyfall is a very grand story to start off this series. The vast majority for that 2-part episode is of course incorporating the styles of James Bond. It does very much feel like a movie soundtrack, especially the Doctor soundtrack, which is once again taking a lot of the style choices from the original 13th Doctor theme. Other notable mentions Productions is of course the MI6 music, being incredibly dramatic, as well as the master reveal music that we do of course see at the end of Spyfall Part 1. Moving on to Orphan 55, we get to see a little bit of a retreat to the style that we kind of associate with Segun Akinola by this point, because the beauty of Segun's music is no matter where the 13th Doctor goes throughout the Doctor Who universe, every single alien planet that the 13th Doctor visits has a rather similar soundtrack, not in a repetitive way, but it feels like the house style of Segun is kind of incorporated into each individual planet, and it makes for a nice thing to recognise as the Doctor goes throughout Segun's universe of music, I suppose. Each alien planet has a little bit of similarity, and that is what we get to see within Orphan 55, having quite a lot of themes that I would associate with episodes like, say, The Ghost Monument within the previous series. It uses a very almost grungy type of music where it incorporates metal being scratched, especially for the dramatic scenes that are meant to be, I suppose, evoking tension. Have a complete parallel to that as we have the almost hospitality lobby style music that we get to see for Tranquilla Spa, and much like the rest of the tracks for this story, we get to see a theme, a story being told throughout the soundtrack, which is a theme that is incorporated throughout episodes such as Praxeus as well, the Ascension of the Cybermen music, where we go from a calm introduction into the more urban sort of battle-threatening music to reflect that movement within the narrative. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror once again returns to a more soothing style of music and is one of my personal favourite stories of the season, both in the narrative form, as I did of course mention throughout my series 12 episode reviews. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror is my personal favourite story of the series. It uses string and percussion instruments. It feels a lot more natural and a type of music that you would expect to see within a period drama, which is a striking comparison once again to episodes such as Orphan 55 that is using a very contemporary grunge style music. Fugitive of the Judoon is where the music starts to get upped a notch, as we have lots of great scores throughout this story, and I do also encounter possibly one of my flaws that I have with Segun Akinola's music, where we get to see the return of the Judoon. However, I kind of feel that we don't have a piece of music that I can associate with the Judoon in my head. We just have a generic battle style music to represent the troopers marching down the Judoon spaceship. Nothing particularly too iconic. Of course, one of the main highlights not only of this episode but the series as a whole is of course the reveal of the Ruth Doctor music, one of the most iconic pieces of music in fact throughout the 13th Doctor era so far, and that is reflected within this soundtrack. To be able to listen to this piece of music without having the dialogue over the top, once again it represents the entirely different path that this series goes down beyond this point, having the reveal of a new incarnation of the Doctor. It is very dramatic, and I love the way that we had the incorporation of the 13th Doctor's theme in there as well. It kind of shows this is the Doctor that you know, and we're going to bring in this completely unknown incarnation, mash the music together to create this brilliant disruption, once again reflecting the script itself. Moving on to Praxeus now, we once again get a return to the music that I would associate with the Ghost Monument and Orphan 55. We have a nice dramatic piece of music, some tension to recreate the scenes within the early half of the story, where we get to see lots of different locations around the world and a few rather haunting sequences as some of the characters lurk between those dark corridors and we think that something is behind the doors, to reveal of course a sand creature behind them on the operating table. All of that is brilliant. However, once again, it doesn't really have a recognisable style. It's nothing that I could associate with this story compared to, say, other episodes. Nothing particularly makes it stand out to me. However, the main piece of music that I did like for Praxeus was the Two Girls Roaming music, or whatever it's called. It's the vlogger style music that I'm needing to check the title of. It is, in fact, Three Idiots Roaming, and it is a very unusual piece of music because it feels like the type of music that you would associate with a vlogger. It's the type of background royalty-free music that you would expect to see in a clothing haul or something like that. Once again, reflecting the characters, reflecting the themes throughout the story, and it is very creative, and it's something that I couldn't imagine Murray Gold doing. I think Segun is very good at presenting character within his music, arguably a bit more so perhaps than Murray Gold. Progressing on to the later half of Series 12 now, I think by this point you always have a little bit of a dud story that people normally forget about. However, Can You Hear Me in fact presents some rather nice and experimental music. We have some great moments, once again a bit similar to that of Orphan 55 where you have the scraping of almost metal. This time round we have what sounds like the scraping and tapping of wood, along with a really lovely accompanying of a almost long stroke of a cello, presenting almost the dreamscape that we get to see throughout the story. It's different, and what I love about Segun's music is that each individual episode, or each individual narrative I suppose, has a theme. Although it is still the same house style, there is still some very obvious differences between a number of the different tracks throughout this series, representing the progression as we go through the different episodes, which I really do appreciate listening to, and it is a nice experience to listen to from start to finish. We of course move on to what I suppose is the three-part series finale, which has a massive scope of music. Of course we have The Haunting of Villa Diodati, which has some rather Can You Hear Me-esque sort of Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror as well music in there, having a few more natural, more string and percussion instruments used within the music score to really evoke the sense of a haunted house, as well as some themes that are incorporated from the later stories throughout this series. A great example is the Ashad music, of course the Lone Cyberman as he is also known. We have the main Cyberman theme that is used throughout the later stories being brought into The Haunting of Villa Diodati. However, it is given a much more steampunk style. Of course, a lot of the main chords are still in there. However, it is almost covered up by a few more natural sounds over the top to reflect the story setting that this episode is of course within. Of course, the Ascension of the Cybermen kind of uses both of those themes, as we have the main cyber spaceship using what you would expect, the more urban sci-fi crashing of metal music, very dramatic, and it feels like an event, it feels like a series finale. Is brilliantly juxtapositioned with the Brendan music, is the only way I can describe it. Lovely relaxing violin music to of course present this historical variation of Ireland that we later find out to once again be a dreamscape, of course a representation of the Doctor's past, of course from the Timeless Children. This is one of the most iconic pieces of music from Doctor Who Series 12, and after listening to this album it was the tune that was stuck in my head. It is instantly recognisable and it creates a footprint. It almost creates a tie to the episode as well, and what I find with a successful piece of Doctor Who music is when you hear it without having the visuals and you can instantly link it to the visuals from the story, or maybe even the dialogue that you hear throughout the episode when the music plays. And then we move on to the final episode of Doctor Who Series 12 being The Timeless Children, which is almost an amalgamation of all the music that we've had so far this series. Lots of powerful scores. We have the return of the Master, so therefore the return of his soundtrack with a little bit of a remix in there as well, and we also have the Cyber Masters, which is a most unusual piece of music incorporating both Gallifrey and cyber music, which I never quite thought I would hear within Doctor Who, but that is of course what we got to see represented throughout this story, like it or hate it. One of my personal favourite pieces of music from this story is capturing the civilization of Gallifrey. We have almost Segun's approach to This Is Gallifrey, the music score by Murray Gold, and it does very much feel like an ancient civilization progressing through time. It is the music that plays. Also we have the Tecta-Un sequences and the citadel being built over the time lapse. It's a great piece of music, very relaxing, very soothing, and once again a rather striking break from the dramatic sequences that we get to see with the master scores as well as the cyber music, and of course as well, to finish off the series, a few remixes of the 13th Doctor's music in there as well. It does of course make a welcome return. As always, I do love the 13th Doctor's score as it captures the character so very well. And of course it only makes sense to finish off Doctor Who Series 12 with the theme tune itself. This time round we have an extended version which no doubt will be pleasing a lot of fans, because we have the return of the Middle Eight, because Ascension of the Cybermen did of course see an extended version of the theme to cover the Next Time trailer. I do love the Segun Akinola approach to the Doctor Who theme. It is a great blend between the Delia Derbyshire Radiophonic Workshop original 60s theme and incorporating more modern and contemporary styles in there. It's great to see that hark back to historical Doctor Who, but also bringing it forward into the 21st century, and makes for a brilliant way to of course finish off this album. And that is it. That is my review of the Doctor Who Series 12 original television soundtrack. I think the thing to take away from this review is generally if you've watched the 13th Doctor episodes and like the sound of the music, then yes, I definitely recommend buying this album. But as always, when it comes to Doctor Who music scores, this is not a product that will suit everybody's tastes, because Doctor Who music is of an acquired taste. Even if you like the programme, it doesn't mean that you would willingly listen to the music when you're not watching the actual episodes. Over time, I've collected some rather unusual Doctor Who soundtracks, the likes of the Dalek soundtrack from 1963 with the Tristan Carey compositions, a very cold and clinical soundtrack, or even the likes of Dominic Glynn in Survival and say the Five Doctors with the Peter Howell music, all very, very different in style, but most importantly capture a period in time that reflects the history of Doctor Who music. And I think that is the best thing to take out of products like this. It is a slice of Doctor Who history from the musical perspective, and if that's something that floats your boat, I definitely recommend buying this release. At the end of the day, it's 10 quid, and it makes for a good 2 or so hours worth of listening. Thank you very much for watching this review of the Doctor Who original Series 12 soundtrack. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this product, please do feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I will of course try my best to answer them at some point in the near future. And do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for brand new Doctor Who content each and every week. Thanks once again for watching, stay safe, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.